What would happen if healthcare became a reward, not a right? This is the radical question posed by America's dictator, Richard "Dick" Tater, as he steers the nation into uncharted waters. Picture this: a world where healthcare is no longer a universal right, but a privilege earned by maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Would it foster a healthier society or create a greater divide? Tater's policy is clear. If you're indulging in unhealthy habits, like a diet filled with junk food, or if you're a smoker or drug user, you're out of the healthcare loop. The message is simple: reform or face the consequences. But let's delve deeper into this policy. What does it mean for public health? On one hand, it could encourage healthier habits, reducing the burden on the healthcare system. On the other hand, it might exclude those who need help the most, people struggling with addiction or those who can't afford a healthy diet. Imagine a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She can't afford fresh produce, so she relies on cheaper, less healthy options. According to Tater's policy, she's off the healthcare grid. Her health deteriorates, she loses her jobs, her children suffer. It's a vicious cycle. Or consider a veteran battling PTSD and turning to substance abuse. He's also excluded from healthcare. His mental health worsens, he becomes a risk to himself and others. Tater's policy, instead of offering help, pushes him further into the abyss. This approach to healthcare is a double-edged sword. While it might push some to lead healthier lives, it could also further marginalize those already struggling. It's a delicate balance, and one that could have profound implications for society. There are no easy answers here. Only time will tell if Tater's radical approach will lead to a healthier, more prosperous nation, or if it will create a society riddled with inequality and health crises. But can a society thrive when healthcare is conditional? That's the million-dollar question, and one that we'll continue to grapple with in the days to come. What is the cost of crossing borders illegally? This question brings us to Richard "Dick" Tater's immigration policy, a policy that has sparked widespread debate and controversy. Tater's stance on immigration is unyieldingly stern. His policy, which involves executing those who cross the border illegally, is as controversial as it is severe. The message is clear: illegal immigration will not be tolerated. This hardline approach is a departure from previous policies. Rather than focusing on detention or deportation, Tater's administration has taken a route that is, to say the least, extreme. The aim, it seems, is to deter potential border crossers through the threat of the ultimate punishment. But what are the ethical implications of such a policy? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which the United States is a signatory, clearly states, "Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person." By enforcing a policy that threatens these fundamental rights, are we not undermining the very principles upon which our nation was built? The practical implications are equally complex. While Tater's policy may indeed deter some from attempting to cross the border, it also risks creating a climate of fear and desperation. For those fleeing violence or persecution, this policy could push them further into the shadows, making them more susceptible to exploitation. Furthermore, implementing such a policy carries significant costs. The financial burden of trials and executions, not to mention the potential diplomatic fallout, could far outweigh any perceived benefits. And what of the impact on America's image abroad? Our reputation as a land of freedom and opportunity could be irreparably damaged. Finally, there is the question of effectiveness. Will this policy truly solve America's immigration challenge, or will it merely exacerbate existing issues? After all, history has shown us that punitive measures alone are seldom effective in addressing complex social issues. Is this the solution to America's immigration challenge, or a step too far? As we continue to grapple with this question, one thing is certain: Richard Tater's immigration policy will be a defining aspect of his time in office. What if everyone paid the same tax and earned the same wage? Imagine an America under the rule of Richard "Dick" Tater, where this question isn't just a hypothetical. Tater's ambitious plan involves a flat 15% tax nationwide, no exceptions. Regardless of whether you're a billionaire tech mogul or a humble schoolteacher, 15% of your income would go straight to Uncle Sam. This approach, while seemingly fair on the surface, would be a departure from our current progressive tax system. Today, those who earn more pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes. Tater's flat tax, on the other hand, would level the playing field, but at what cost? Economists argue that this could lead to decreased government revenue and a potential increase in the wealth gap. Yet others believe it could simplify our convoluted tax code and encourage economic growth. Now let's turn to wages. Tater doesn't stop at taxes, he's also advocating for a national minimum wage of $20 per hour. This is a significant increase from the current federal minimum wage. But what would this mean for our economy? On one hand, it could stimulate consumer spending as more people would have more money to spend. This in turn could boost economic growth. Yet, on the other hand, businesses, especially small ones, might struggle with the increased labor costs. They could be forced to cut jobs, automate, or even close their doors. It's a delicate balance between improving living standards for workers and maintaining the health of our businesses. Furthermore, the impact on income inequality is not clear-cut. While a higher minimum wage could lift many out of poverty, it could also exacerbate unemployment among the least skilled or experienced workers. Tater's proposals are bold, and they promise equality. But they also bring uncertainty. Would they lead to a more equitable society or simply create new problems? Could this be the key to economic equality or a recipe for economic disaster? Only time would tell. What if America stopped fighting and started trading with its enemies? This is the radical question posed by the audacious Richard Dick Tater. In a departure from traditional foreign policy, Tater proposes a shift from military action to commerce, a pivot from combat boots to business suits. He envisions a world where America's might is measured not in the size of its arsenal, but in the strength of its economy. A world where the battlefield is the marketplace, and the weapons are goods and services. This approach has its potential benefits. Firstly, it could lead to a reduction in military expenditure, freeing up funds for domestic initiatives like the nationwide minimum wage of $20 an hour that Tater intends to implement. Secondly, it could foster better relationships with countries that have been historically antagonistic, creating a more interconnected and cooperative global community. But let's not don rose-colored glasses just yet. Despite its allure, this strategy carries significant risks. In the first place, the assumption that commerce alone can resolve deep-seated political and ideological differences is, at best, optimistic. Economic interests are important, but they are not the only factors that drive international relations. Secondly, by reducing military spending, America could potentially compromise its ability to defend itself and its allies in the event of a conflict. In a world that is often unpredictable, having a strong military can serve as a deterrent to those who might seek to exploit perceived weaknesses. Lastly, there's the risk that this approach could backfire economically. If America becomes overly reliant on trade with nations that do not share its values, it could find itself in a vulnerable position should those relationships sour. To sum up, Tater's proposed shift in foreign policy is both bold and controversial. It promises a more peaceful world where commerce trumps conflict, but it also carries risks that cannot be ignored. Is this a feasible solution to global conflicts or a naive approach to international relations? Only time will tell. How did a man with such radical ideas rise to power? In the whirlwind of political discourse, Richard Tater emerged as a figure of intrigue and controversy. His radical policies, though shocking to many, resonated with certain sections of the American public. Tater's rise to power didn't happen overnight, but through a series of events and circumstances that created the perfect storm. Tater's journey began in the rustic heartland of America. A self-proclaimed man of the people, he connected with the everyday struggles of the average American. He promised them a better future, one where they wouldn't have to worry about healthcare costs or low wages. His conditional healthcare policy, though controversial, was seen by some as a way to promote healthier lifestyles and reduce the strain on the healthcare system. His hardline stance on immigration, while striking fear in the hearts of many, appealed to those who felt that their country was being overrun. Tater promised to protect the integrity of the nation's borders, even if his methods were extreme. The financial policies of Tater were equally divisive. His proposition of a flat tax and a nationwide minimum wage of $20 per hour, though radical, appealed to those who felt exploited by the existing economic system. They saw in Tater a leader who would fight for their rights and ensure fair compensation for their labor. Tater's shift in foreign policy marked a stark departure from the traditional American stance. He proposed cutting military expenditure and fostering peaceful commerce with former enemies. Many saw this as a welcome change from the cycle of war and destruction that had dominated the previous decades. Tater's rise to power can be attributed to his ability to tap into the frustrations and aspirations of the American people. He offered them a vision of a different America, one that departed radically from the status quo. Are these policies the future of America or a sign of a society in crisis? This question looms large as we grapple with the legacy of Richard Tater. Whether his radical ideas will shape the future or be relegated to the annals of history, only time will tell.